Thank you, Loic. Thank you. Bonjour. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here with you today and to be able to share some ideas about how to communicate more effectively. I have met so many of you young entrepreneurs with ideas. And that's what I want to talk about today. Ideas. Big, bold, transcendent ideas are the currency of the 21st century. In the information age, you are only as successful as the information that you have to deliver to me. And yet, as neuroscientists like Gregory Burns have pointed out, a person can have the greatest idea in the world. If that person cannot convince enough other people, then what does it matter? How many of you are bloggers? It should matter to you. How many of you are startup entrepreneurs? It should matter. Business leaders, it should matter. The ability to persuasively communicate your ideas is the single greatest skill that will help you accomplish your dreams in the next 10 years. And isn't that what we're talking about today? The next 10 years. Here's billionaire Warren Buffett speaking to a class of business students about the value he places on communication skills.
Right now, I would pay $100,000 for 10% of the future earnings of any of you. So anybody wants to see me after this is over. Now, if that's true, you're $1 million asset right now, right? If 10% of you is worth $100,000, you could improve the value. Many of you, and I certainly could have when I got out, if just in terms of learning communication skills. You know, it's not something that's taught. I actually went to a Dale Carnegie course later on in terms of public speaking. But if you improve your value 50% by having better communication skills, that's, you know, it's another $500,000, you know, in terms of capital value. See me after the class and I'll pay you, you know, $150.
Why would he add more value for communication skills? Because as Daniel Pink, a best-selling author, has recently pointed out, like it or not, we're all in sales now. That means we are selling and are pitching ourselves all of the time. And yet the 21st century requires a 21st century model of communication. It's a multimedia generation. We are communicating in photos, videos, in 140 characters. Here's the good news. In the last 10 years, scientists using brain scans have been able to understand more about how the brain processes information than we have learned in all of civilization to date. That means we know what moves you, and we can use it to our advantage, especially over the next 10 years, to achieve everything that our heart desires. I've taken all of this information and have spent about a year really studying the science of persuasion. I've written a new book called Talk Like TED. It's based on the TED conference, but it's much more than that. It's all about how the world's most inspiring communicators connect with us. And what I've learned is that there are 3 unbreakable laws of communication. If you break the laws, bad things happen. Ideas fail to get funding. Products fail to sell. Careers fail to soar. But if you obey the laws, you get noticed. You get what your heart desires. You achieve your goals. You sell products. You sell your ideas. What are those 3 unbreakable laws? They are emotional, novel, memorable. Let's take each one by one. Emotion. Ideas that spread are emotional. You have to touch my heart before you reach my head. Most people forget the heart part, don't they? They forget that heart part. Passion is everything. You cannot inspire unless you are inspired yourself. How many of you were here yesterday morning with Ferran Adria, the restaurateur behind El Bulli? I was backstage with him, and this is the kind of person I am. I'm always asking great leaders and successful people about their secrets. I said, what's the secret? He said, there's only one. Make sure that you are passionate about what you do. Make sure you are passionate about what you do. You can't inspire unless you're inspired first. Dr. Larry Smith of the University of Waterloo in Canada studies entrepreneurship and passion. And he said passion is the thing that will help you create the highest expression of your talent. Sounds good. But I've asked Dr. Smith, how do you know it when you find it? How do you know when you have found and discovered your passion? Here's his answer.
Passion is your greatest love. Passion is the thing that will help you create the highest expression of your talent. Passion, interest, it's not the same thing. Are you really going to go to your sweetie and say, marry me? You are interesting. Won't happen. Won't happen, and you will die alone. What you want is passion. It is beyond interest. You need 20 interests, and then one of them might be grab you. One of them might engage you more than anything else, and then you may have found your greatest love in comparison to all the other things that interest you. And that's what passion is.
Passion is your greatest love. How does that apply to us as entrepreneurs? It does. When I asked Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, what is your passion? What is your greatest love? He never mentioned the coffee. It's not the coffee. Howard Schultz is passionate about creating a workplace that treats people with dignity and respect. There's a very famous entrepreneur in America named Tony Hsieh, who I've spent some time with. He started an e-commerce company in the spare bedroom of his San Francisco apartment, sold it to Amazon for more than $1 billion. Do you know what he sells? Shoes. It's called Zappos. When I asked Tony, what is your greatest love? It's not the shoes. In fact, he wears old shoes until they're worn out. He doesn't even care about new shoes. But he's passionate about delivering happiness. So he studies happiness. How do I make my customers happy? How do I make my employees happy? Earlier this year, I had an extraordinary opportunity to spend a day with Richard Branson. When you ask him, what is your greatest love? It is not getting people from point A to point B on an airplane. His greatest love is elevating the customer experience, disrupting the status quo, and now using proceeds from that disruption to make the world a better place. Ask yourself, what is my greatest love? Dig deep to identify what it is that you're passionate about, and then share it with us. Share it with us through the stories you tell. Master storytelling. I've interviewed some of the world's most astonishing communicators, like this gentleman. Brian Stevenson is a civil rights attorney in America who successfully argues and wins cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. I know some of you have pitched venture capitalists. There is no audience tougher than Supreme Court justices. When you break down his public presentations, this is what you find. It's 65% of the content falls under what Aristotle would call pathos, emotion, storytelling. 25% ethos, evidence, to back up your argument. Only 10% logos, logic, data, statistics. When most of us are pitching our ideas, it's the complete opposite. Remarkable things happen to your brain on stories. If I were to sit down and tell you a story, if I just sat down here and told you a story about, if I told this young lady in the front row a story about my father, for example, who grew up in Italy, and they left Italy to go to America to find a better life for themselves. This was after World War II. Or if I told you a story about my grandmother, we would connect. Do you know why we would connect? Because researchers at Princeton University are finding when I tell you a story, the same areas of our brains light up. That means we are literally in sync. We are connected with each other. Identify that which you are most passionate about and transfer it through the stories you tell. Emotion. Novelty is the second unbreakable law of communication. Teach me something new. Ideas that spread are new and exciting and unexpected. Dr. A.K. Pradeep is a neuroscientist in Berkeley, California, who I've spent some time with. He said our brains are trained to look for something brilliant and new, something that stands out, something that looks delicious. Look for that deliciousness. Steve Jobs took this to an extreme. Steve Jobs would actually tell his designers that he wanted the buttons on the desktop to look so good he would lick them. That's a little extreme, but you get the idea. Steve Jobs was a brilliant communicator and a brilliant marketer because he showed us new ways to solve old problems. And he presented those products in ways that were fresh, unique, and unexpected. How many of you recall seeing the video, perhaps you were there, but most of you probably saw the video of the 2007 introduction of the iPhone. How many here, maybe close to me, how many saw the video? A few of you. Sir, can you tell me, any of you, can you tell me what you remember the most from that particular presentation? Which one? The look of the iPhone, how it looked for the first time. What else do you remember? Some of you remember when he introduced 3 products that turned out to be 1. How many of you who had your hands up, how many of you remembered that? Okay, pretty much all of you had your hands up. There's a reason for that, because it was novel. Steve Jobs' audience that day expected 3 products. They got 1. It surprised them, and it turned out to be one of the most memorable moments in presentation history.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
It's novel. The brain cannot ignore novelty. I spoke to Dr. Robert Ballard. Dr. Robert Ballard is an amazing guy. He discovered a tiny ship. You may have heard about it, Titanic, 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic. Here's what he told me. Your mission in any presentation is to inform, educate, and inspire. You can only inspire when you give people a new way of looking at the world. We are all explorers here. We're exploration addicts. We love to learn new things. When you learn something new, surprising, and unexpected, something amazing happens to the brain. A powerful chemical is released called dopamine. It acts as your brain's mental save button, literally stamping the information on your brain. The brain cannot ignore novelty. Give your audience a fresh way of looking at an old problem. And finally, none of this matters if I can't remember what you said. Present content in a way that I will never forget. In the few minutes I have left, I'm going to give you 3 very specific techniques to help you make your ideas more memorable, and they work nearly every time. They are very powerful techniques. Number 1, picture superiority. Very well established in the academic research. Picture superiority simply means that if I show you a picture, or let's say I talk to you first, if I just have a conversation with you, you will remember about 10% of what I tell you. Add a picture, retention soars to 65%. Use more pictures than words. I'll bet most of you today, from Ramon de Leon's presentation this morning, most of you are going to remember, if asked tomorrow, what slides do you remember? You'll remember him as the pizza delivery driver in that black and white slide. Pictures are more powerful than words alone. The second technique, again, very powerful. Stick to the rule of 3. The rule of 3 simply means that in short-term memory, my brain is only capable of carrying about 3 chunks of information. Don't give me 18 reasons to invest in your company, just 3. A couple of years ago, when I was at LeWeb, some gentleman sent me this gorgeous infographic. It shows how the rule of 3 pervades every aspect of our society, from slogans to theology to companies, certainly to literature. The 3 Musketeers, the 3 Little Pigs, the 3 Bears. In a couple of weeks, parents around the world will be reading A Christmas Carol to their children, and they will hear about the 3 ghosts who visit Ebenezer Scrooge, ghosts of Christmas past, present, future. Here in France, you have 3 colors of the flag, royal blue, white, red. I don't know if it's on here, but the great motto from the French Revolution, liberté, égalité, fraternité. 3, not 22, 3. 3 is very, very powerful. It's one of the most powerful techniques in communication today. And in the spirit of the rule of 3, let me give you one more technique to make your ideas memorable. Keep it short. I've been given 20 minutes to talk. 20 minutes is the ideal length of time for me to have a serious discussion with you, but also to keep it short so you don't lose your attention. So in the few minutes I've got left, I will cut it short myself, and I'll even bring it in under 20 minutes, because a lot can happen in under 20 minutes. John Kennedy inspired a nation to look to the stars in 15 minutes. Steve Jobs delivered one of the most powerful commencement addresses of our time. It's been viewed 20 million times in 15 minutes. Dr. Martin Luther King articulated his vision of racial harmony in 17 minutes. If these gentlemen can express their ideas in under 20 minutes, 20 minutes is plenty of time for you to pitch that VC. 5 minutes should be plenty of time for you to get that information across. Keep it short. I want this conversation to continue. If you remember my name, you can go to my website, carminegallo.com. In Italian, it's carminegallo.com. And you can sign up for my list, and we can have this conversation, and that's a good way of communicating with me, because I want to hear your success stories. But before I end, I really need to tell you this one thing that's very important to me. None of this matters. None of this matters if you do not have the courage to stay in your lane. That means that you have the courage to identify your life's core purpose and relentlessly follow that purpose despite the people who are going to try to shove you to another lane or pull you into their lane. You must have the courage to drown out, you know who they are, the critics, the naysayers, the pessimists, the defeatists. Have the courage to listen to your inner voice, that inner voice that says, my ideas will be heard. My ideas will help me fulfill my ultimate destiny. My ideas will change the world. Stay in your lane and be everything that you were intended to be. Thank you so much for inviting me to Paris today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carmine.
Thank you, Louis. Always an honor.